Hello, everyone. Welcome to Reiki Radio. I am your host, Yolanda, and I am so excited about this episode. It's very, very personal for me. You will be meeting and learning from a beautiful woman named Melinda Pavlata. And Melinda is a Reiki teacher. She considers herself a body alchemist. She infuses her lifetime experiences on stages from around the world. She is a circus artist, a choreographer, a belly dancer, and an academic who specializes in narratives of female empowerment into her energetic arts. So, all of her students really do enjoy her poetic yet practical teaching and attention to sacred detail, which guides them deeper into the magic of the divine feminine and helps them own their gifts in artistic expression and performance. So, you will hear more about Melinda's journey in this episode. But part of the reason we're having this conversation today is because she will be hosting her own podcast called Mythic Mel. And through Mythic Mel, she is going to share with us the stories from Greek mythology, but very specific how they mirror our own life journeys and these beautiful expressions of being human and what we can learn from the myths, the strengths, the wounds, the challenges, and the triumphs, everything that will support us in recognizing our own innate potential and possibility. So, we are going to talk all about her upcoming podcast, Mythic Mel. You will learn again about her journey, how she's gone from being a performer in a circus to a belly dancer to being a teacher of Reiki, but really how it all points to the same thing. In fact, there are a few things she says that will really stand out to you in this conversation. One being that every aspect of your life is energy work. So I can't wait for you to meet Melinda. We're going to get into the episode now. If you want to learn more about Melinda and her work, be sure to visit her website, moodystreetcircus.com. If you want to check her out, Mythic Mel on the new podcast platform, Awakening Airwaves, which is actually going to highlight several different energy healers and teachers. You can go to the reikiclass.com, which I will tell you more about soon, or you can also go to awakeningairwaves.com. Either way, all of the ways to connect are down in the show description, but for now, get comfy and I will see you on the other side. Okay, everyone, we are here today with one of my absolute favorites, Melinda Pavlata of Moody Street Circus, also Speakeasy Reiki, and now Mythic Mel on Awakening Airways. Welcome to the show, my love.
Thank you. This is so fun. I'm so excited.
I'm very excited. I'm very excited that we are going to have this space where the community can connect with healers and teachers from all over the world, very reputable teachers and healers, but also we are launching this podcast platform to accompany it where everyone in the community can also learn from people who have been practicing that perhaps you haven't heard their voices and their stories yet. So Melinda is one who is contributing and yeah, we're really, really excited about it. So I wanted to have a conversation with you today. One, because your work and how you work is very inspiring. And so everyone can get a taste of what you will be offering on the podcast called Mythic Mel. So I just want to start with I mentioned that you are a co founder of Moody Street Circus. Can you give everyone a little bit about your background before even leading into the energy work? What did your life look like?
Yes. Okay. It was a wild, wild life so far. I grew up in like California hippie 1960s, and I was born to two performing artists, dancer and a musician, who were just completely immersed in the arts and in sort of free thinking. And so I was like the hippie kid who was passed back and forth between parents and involved in their lives on all levels, professionally as well. So I would be like belly dancing with my mom on stages from the age of 2, all through my life. And then I would be, when I was with my dad, he was in the circus for a while doing, he was the band leader of the Pickle Family Circus. And I would be involved in the circus doing cartwheels and standing on people's shoulders. And so I had this very, very rich childhood full of lots of different experiences on different stages around the world. And, and at a certain point, I decided that I would rebel and go to academia and like get a PhD in French literature. It all makes sense in the weave of life as you look back, but it was just something that I really wanted to do. I wanted to stay put for a while and like be in the library and study. And after a lifetime of going back and forth, like, and never having a fixed home, being in the library and reading was like the best medicine for me.
Yeah.
So, I did all of that, and little by little was realizing once I became a mom that something was needed in my life that wasn't happening, and it was like I had a loneliness, and I couldn't quite figure out what I was lonely for. I had people who loved me, but it was loneliness for me. It was somehow I wasn't fully inhabiting my life in the way that I felt I probably should be. And so that led me down a whole nother rabbit hole of like discovering what it is that I did want and how did I want to direct my life and what did I want to do. And I ended up leaving academia and really embracing my childhood arts of belly dance and circus, and realizing that those were the modalities I wanted to be in and teach and allow people access to those things because they were so important and so needed in people's regular lives. So it just feels so meaningful to me to teach dance, to help people move their body, to help people challenge themselves by getting stronger to be able to go in the air. But also now I have this speakeasy Reiki component. So I have both like the creative and the physical, but then also the energy work in the back room where I look at people's lives with them and hold space for like what it is they're going through and helping them to see more potential and create more space in their lives for healing and for even more creativity in their own like private lives. So now I really feel lucky to have weaved this life together in this one place where I now get to like be in the driver's seat, so to speak, and, really work on my own energy practices and still do all those beautiful things that I learned as a child and share with people.
Yeah, I want to just say a couple of things. It's very interesting having met you because I told you before, you know this, in my 20s, I studied belly dance with a couple of different teachers. And I honestly don't even know what my draw was at the time, other than maybe some alternative form of exercise rather than going to the gym. But meeting you and your connection to dance and the way that you would blend dance with, myth and tarot and, really concentrating on connection to body and this deep sensuality with having a body awareness. You brought this different lens of movement and dance to my life in a way I was like, wow, it's very interesting what this woman is doing, right? So I wanted to know, could you talk a little bit about that? Because you said you've been performing since such a young age. And I imagine is there some difference between being the performer versus where you get to sink into the way that you teach dance to be very, it feels like a intimate experience.
Yeah, it's a very different modality to be the performer than to be the teacher. to be the performer, I mean, they're both delightful. I love both teaching and performing. When I'm performing, I really feel myself to be almost like a priestess in a way. You know, you're there to raise the vibration of the crowd. You're there to lift spirits and kind of enact a ritual of basically the joy of life is how I always feel it. That is my ultimate that's my ultimate mission, is to celebrate being alive. And so, and even when I'm coaching people to perform, in when they're going on stage and not just in my class, to just remind them that it's about enjoyment of the dance, and it's not like you have to be perfect about it. You have to show that you love it, and actually not just show it, but actually feel that, you know, and train for the feeling of that. And that is actually how I do. So that's a good lead into the classes, because that is what I want in class too, is to slow things down so that people actually feel comfortable in their body. They tune into their breath. They notice small details, you know, textures, how you move your hands through the air, you know, what's initiating the movement. I use lots of imagery about, you know, how, you know, the wrists, they have meridian connections to the heart. And when we move our wrists, we're perfuming the air with a love essence, you know. And if you move in that way, like in a mist of love or pleasure for yourself first, that translates better to even an audience who, I mean, they're not there to watch somebody, you know, quite quote show off, or, you know, it has to be an authentic expression, and then it's felt very differently. So there is, that does dovetail into the performing and then the teaching. But yeah, I like to guide people into really getting deeply in tune with their, all the layers of the movement. So there's like interior feelings and contractions and releases, and then there's sort of this exterior, more energy going out versus energy feeling in. And that's what I love about belly dance, is it basically, and it has many aspects to it. There's like the very interior serpentine sensual quality, and that's also very improvisational. So you get to listen to your own intuition about how to move. And then there's the fast-paced, like rhythmic drumming part for a drum solo. There's veil dancing, you know, playing finger cymbals. I mean, essentially, for me, belly dance really is like being a modern day energy worker, dancer, priestess.
Well, that's the part that I've always thought was so interesting about you, because it started to show how the way that you teach dance and the way that you are in relationship to it is not really dissimilar from a lot of the work that we do, say, in energy work, and also you being a practitioner of like Qigong and these types of things as well. So before we get into that blend, even though you've already kind of pointed to it, how then did you move into this arena of being curious about energy work and body work in a different kind of way?
I think it was a process over time, as most things are. But I started to recognize, even in my body, what felt constricting and what felt expanding. Like I just was just intuitively guided to kind of go, oh, I'm seeing and feeling things that don't feel good to me. And then other things maybe do feel good to me. I know this sounds so crazy, but just something so simple like that, of honoring when and what made me not feel great, and realizing that I didn't have to do that, and that I could maybe make another choice. You know, that in a sense is energy work right there. I didn't see it as that in the beginning, but that intuition led me to kind of start to make changes in my life. And and then well, most of my life, even though my mother reads palms and even though we talk about astrology and I'm always around goddesses and etc., for whatever reason, I was always like, I'm never going to a psychic because, I'm just not going, because I gotta just do my work and pay the bills and, what are they going to do for me? Blah, blah, blah. I had a real cynical attitude. And I remember a friend of mine had me come to intuition psychic classes at her apartment with a psychic, and it really was a wake up moment for me to be in that class and to have this go in and have a guided journey, which the lady led us through, and then we all recounted our experience within the guided journey of what we saw and felt and sensed. And I remember recounting that, and it was incredible. I'm walking through this woods and I'm seeing that I'm hearing the crunch of my feet on the pine. I'm smelling the scent of the trees and coming to a clearing, et cetera, et cetera. There's, all of this stuff. And I'm recounting it. And then I said to her, yeah, but I was just making that up. That was nothing. I was just making that up. And she looked at me and she was like in a fury almost. And she was like, that is not making things up. That is your divine imagination. That is your intuition speaking to you. That is important. And you should always pay attention to how you process these journeys. And just the vehemence that she said it with, and also that she validated my experience, and she said, you have a gift that you could develop. And she was empowering in that way. And at some point, she also did, I had a private session with her, and she did a inner child healing, and which I'd never had because I'd resisted for years doing anything like that. And it was the most amazing feeling. I couldn't I remember she had a stone in each hand, and one was my child self, and one was my present self. And she was trying to have me bring them together. I couldn't bring them together, whatever. It was crazy. They just wouldn't go together. And then she had me visualize myself in all these different times of my life, and send myself love in all of those times when I was different stages, like 4 and 7 and, et cetera, on up. By the end of that, I was dissolved in tears and feeling as light as a feather. It was like a combination of, there was such a release that happened at a level that was not just body. It was body, but it felt more. And then in the days following that, I found myself cleaning closets, I found myself doing unexpected things in my house that I don't usually do, and mostly involving clearing and cleansing. Yeah. And I recognized also a feeling at my crown, a lightness that I had never really tuned into my energy body before in this way. And I just felt like this was first of all, it was an incredible gift. I started to surrender to this kind of feeling humble in front of what was a dimension that I really had discounted before, and which now was feeling like actually it was the most important dimension, and it's the energetic dimension. And it is so powerful and so subtle. But once I got that taste, I never wanted to stop learning. And it just set me on a path. And I started deliberately, taking intuition classes online and reading all the books. And of course, I always did some form of yoga, but now I was paying more attention to the breath and the more spiritual side of yoking body to mind, breath, intention, spirit. And it's inevitable that that wouldn't then feed into my actual dance teaching as well, which the intention with which you dance and the presence and your state of consciousness, your energy matters. How you enter a space, how you stand in front of people, how you love yourself in front of people. It really can transform things. So it's been a profound journey, and I'm now, learning more with you. I never expected to study Reiki and become a Reiki master. I wasn't setting out to do that, but like most people I hear say, Reiki finds them,
Yeah.
and there you are. So now I'm just so grateful to be in this kind of domain and still learning, still finding things out, and still paying attention.
I have to say, it's interesting now that you say that. I realize we've known each other at least 5 years now. And I remember in the beginning of meeting you and having conversations with you, you saying something to the effect of, again, there was still, I don't want to say that you were cynical about it, but more skeptical about what you yourself would be capable of as it came to intuition and energy work. And oh, look at you now. No, but it's very interesting. I don't know that I know, how did Reiki come into your awareness? Did you know someone, or was it something you had heard about?
No, I didn't know anyone. I loved listening to podcasts of all kinds, and I found your podcast, and I just fell in love with you, with your topics, and I binged listened like many people do, on road trips, etc. And you weren't just talking about Reiki too. You were talking about tarot. You were having fun talking with your girlfriends. There was magic, it was like all kinds of stuff that I love. And also just the way that you asked questions. I love questions. I love the way different people ask questions, but I love your questions specifically. And it was always surprising to me. There was nothing, that's what I love too. I love to be surprised, and it just was super authentic. And so Reiki radio, there is Reiki, but I wasn't listening for the Reiki per se.
Yeah.
But then come the pandemic time, when you started to host community kind of meetups,
Yes.
and you had talked about it, I think, on Reiki Radio. I had found your website and was already doing like some teachable classes on intuition, intuitive development. And it just was like, I just was like, I'm here. I gotta go. I gotta go and be part of this. And so I did, and I joined the Alchemy Circle. And most of the people were already practicing Reiki in the circle.
Yeah.
But we weren't just, and I was willing to just go there. I love meditating, and I always have. And we did a lot of meditation, and I love to learn new things. So I was just open to it. But it wasn't like my goal to become, certified and a Reiki practitioner. But there was the influence, happening. And at some point, a couple of the women, maybe four of the women in the group, got together, and they were putting together materials for like a Reiki level 1 training online, and wanted guinea pigs. So I'm a very helpful person, and I said, yes, sign me up. I want to do that. And when I do sign up for stuff, I am going to work very hard, and I'm going to be very diligent in my practice. So
Yeah.
I'm not just going to do it and then half-ass it. Like I was like, okay, tell me what to do, and it was an incredible experience. And there they were presenting the material, and I was doing the practices, and having my hands on, just experimentation, noticing, and at that time I remember putting my hands around my head and feeling this crackle of electricity. you know, but because I didn't have any experience with that, I thought, oh, I didn't have a context really for it.
Yeah.
At the time, I even remember going, God, this is, this was the hibiki, this is that energy like of really my overthinking mind is what I was feeling in a mind that was like not kind of really fully integrated with my body. But I was able to start learning that I was feeling my energy, and then I got that what's I was attuned by one of the beautiful women there in the group, had an absolutely incredible attunement, visuals that
Yeah.
came, and the exchanges were just so powerful, and some things just started to open in my heart, and I felt this more openness, I felt this vulnerability, I felt myself opening to people in different ways,
Yeah.
people that I might have not trusted before, because I think I had, my childhood was really interesting, but it was like going to a lot of new places, lots of new people on stages in front of thousands of people in the audience. Like, you learn as a child performer, like you have to kind of protect your energy in a different kind of way, and you protect yourself, and you don't necessarily trust everybody, and nor should you. So, but that, in a sense, I was kind of undoing an energy field that I had built up around kind of putting some barriers. So it was like, it was an opening. And then, even then, I was like, well, it was wonderful. I loved it. Still wasn't trying to be a Reiki practitioner. And then a year later, and I still was practicing, I did a level 2 certification with a dear friend who's also a sound healer. And also, it just felt wonderful. I just love sitting and feeling energy move, and noticing how I transform, in very subtle ways.
Yeah.
And but then when the opportunity came and you offered your training out in San Diego for all the levels, I jumped at that opportunity and started to realize that I too could be a Reiki practitioner, and I too could help other people feel into themselves. And in a sense, that's what the gift is for me of Reiki. It feels like a modality that gives people back their own power and their
Yes.
own, and it just helps them tune into their own spirit. And it's a very powerful practice, and it's hard to explain. You have to feel it, you have to experience it, but it really helps release things that are stored, and it's not at the analytical level. It's not talk therapy, but it's profound.
Well, I love this part of your story. It's interesting. I'm like, God, I can't believe I never asked you that. Like, I didn't even know, I never knew how you found the podcast or me or anything. So it's very interesting to hear how this journey really did start and unfold for you. But with what you're saying, I love that initially, and it was for some years, it was a stretch of time that what you were learning and what you were practicing, it was just for you, and that you really allowed yourself to be in this observation of how working with energy was changing or helping you understand your relationship to yourself differently, which, from knowing me all these years now, I love. Like, that's the part of this that I love so much. And I just wanted to highlight that because a lot of people don't know that they have permission for it to just be theirs as well. Like, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about that because that is a beautiful kind of transition into I'm working with this in my space and now I feel inspired to share. What was that like for you? Like, what were you starting to discover about yourself through the years of practice and working, energy work, meditation, everything that you do?
I was just starting to understand that everything that we do is energy work. And
Yes.
everything, how you show up at the grocery store, how you wake up in the morning and talk to yourself. Every single aspect of your life is energy work if you start to notice that. And then you start to notice, that the subtle ways that you do talk to yourself, and you start to notice stories, and you kind of can detach from the stories and look at them differently and allow them to be released. But to answer the question, I think I started to recognize that I was doing energy work in my dance classes and circus classes. And all of my life, in either with my mom teaching dance, which she does as well, or me or my sister, I've seen women come to dance and have their lives transformed. Not intentionally, even just moving in this kind of serpentine way seems to bring about changes in people's lives or help them grow through difficult times. Often it's difficult times that bring people in, and they're trying to get back in touch with their body. And I hadn't realized how much energy work is involved in what I was given my profession, so to speak, on a platter, like this was I inherited it from my mom. I'm a second generation belly dancer. I grew up with her teaching. So I hadn't found it just was natural to me. It was like a fish in water. I didn't notice, like that's what I did, but I didn't understand the power of the energy work of the dance. And then when I started doing Reiki practices and realizing how, more about our energy fields and how everything is affected by energy, I started to bring that feeling into my classes more, and this understanding into my classes. And I just started to find a new vocabulary, even for myself, of how to teach. And as I witnessed people, and guided them in their moving, I saw kind of light bulbs go off for them. And everybody just needs a place also to just put down their burdens, and on multiple levels. And I always want to be holding space for that. And I just was excited by the idea of now having a space where it would be where I could really just grow a new modality of healing for people, and even take, my awareness of what it means to move and dance in language and in movements of all kinds, but like to the table, so to speak. And frankly, I love just the feeling of being in session with somebody, of meditating, and being in a certain energy space with someone. I just love it. Like it brings me so much joy, and I always get more energy than I could. I'm receiving even as I'm, channeling with somebody or co-creating this beautiful healing space with them. And I just had this feeling of like, why not give myself this chance to try this? Why not? And also be able to also play with tarot cards and oracle decks and other things that I love. Alchemical conversation with people. I mean, I love a one-on-one with somebody. I want to talk about life. And I really like to pay attention to the smallest details. And those are the things people usually skip over, like why they hate their job. Well, actually, it's when they get in the car and they have a sinking feeling in their heart, but they go anyway, and here's how they power through it. And I always like, let's stop for a minute at that sinking feeling. Like, let's unpack that for a while. Let's pull some cards. Maybe let's do some energy work with that. Because that's where the gold is, the gold of transformation. Because we're not meant to go through life like shoving down our feelings of sinking hearts. You know, we're not meant to do that. Life is short. You know, we have to honor the feelings that we have, and we're not hurting anybody by looking at our feelings and our energy bodies and making some changes to support ourselves.
Well, this I have to ask you now because I don't want us to run out of time, but it is so beautiful to hear about this blend of how everything you love has found, a way of harmonizing in your awareness. The dance, the energy work, the tarot, helping people, supporting people, holding space in all of these beautiful ways. And for everyone listening, don't worry. How to work with Melinda will be down in the show description. But there's this other aspect to you as well. So, for everyone listening, Melinda didn't just belly dance with her mother. You also spent a significant amount of time in Greece. And you also, I guess, blended with, your studies. You fell in love with myth. And now that has even woven into this beautiful picture of what it is that you offer and how you are evolving and how you're sharing. And this is where we get to the Mythic Mel, which will be the podcast that you all can tune in to and listen and learn from Melinda. But I wanted to ask you about that. Can you kind of paint this picture for us of how you grew up, how that influenced even this relationship to the mythology and what we can expect on the podcast?
Yes. Okay. I had the gift of a crazy mother who moved to Greece when I was a little girl, all by herself, to be a belly dancer in the ancient city of Athens. And she brought me over and my sister over to live with her. And I would live with her for 6 months of the year in Athens. And then I would go back to live with my dad in the States. And when I got to Greece and lived at the base of the Parthenon, right in the ancient city, and every day come out of the door and look up and see the Acropolis and Athena's temple and walk around it every day and feed kitty cats in the temple of Zeus and just you're steeped in this mythic magic. It's not separate from your everyday life. It's like myth is everywhere. And I loved myths. Even before I went to Greece, I loved myths and I was reading Greek myths. And so when I went to Greece, I was even more like, I was just amazed and my imagination was already like very magical and I kept expecting to see centaurs and, the gods and goddesses kind of hiding in the pine trees and the olive groves. And so I was kind of walking with one foot in that imaginative realm and the mythic realm, and then one foot just like in my real life, which was also very magical. My real life was belly dancing, balancing a tray of candles on my head in my mom's act, for all these tourists. And we would be outside on the rooftop taverna, and I would be balancing a tray of candles, going into a back bend and looking and seeing the Acropolis, the Parthenon lit up by like this beautiful purple light and this starry sky and the moon. And I mean, it was like as close to a mystical experience as you could get, and I was on stage performing at the same time. So it was like a pretty magical kind of childhood experience being in this mythic place, meeting people who had hero names, like, my landlady was the goddess Athena. I mean, she was Athena, and I had all these friends who were named Odysseus, and it's really very palpable there. And so I always combine, myth is not separate from kind of who I am, and the feeling of that, and the feeling even of the modern Greeks and how they dance together and do their folk dances and celebrate each other. So there was this like blend for me of this magic, mythical place, and then this other culture that has dance as really, it's a huge part of community. And there is not the sense that you're separate from each other in those circle dances that they do. There's this, you're really joined, and everybody, there's nobody's looking at you if you're dancing in the middle like you're some kind of show off and making a judgment. They're clapping for you, and they're wanting you to be your most authentic, life affirmed self. Like, it's like fantastic. So that energy is what I want to bring into this podcast. And I want to look at myth and some of the details and weave it back into the energy work that we do. There's so many fun stories in mythology that, we all know kind of, Athena is the goddess of wisdom and she has an owl and blah, blah. That's fantastic. But there are also details about Athena and how she encouraged Telemachus in the Odyssey about how to show up with courage that he didn't have. He felt very timid, and she comes and speaks to him and almost telepathically to give him courage to speak to someone about his father. And it's really interesting, to look at myth and look at some of the stories from that perspective. And so on the podcast Mythic Mel, I get to sort of play in my mythic dimensional self and look at actual myth, talk to some people who I'm going to be interviewing about, like, say, my friend who is a amazing midwife who has been presiding over births for years and years. I mean, that is just an incredible job.
Yeah.
Like, new life coming into the world, and she's literally a space holder, and for that, and she's so attuned to certain frequencies within that, that space, that I really want to bring her in to talk about the origin myth in Greek mythology. So it's kind of a playful way to talk about Greek mythology and bring in my friends who have incredible, like, careers in things that are not just, like energy work, Reiki, but they are energy workers, and they're starting to recognize that themselves. And I want to talk about that. So things like that are going to be on Mythic Mel, and just even my insights as a dance teacher who, loves rhythm, and even as a circus artist who loves to juggle, like, all of these perspectives will be woven into all the ruminations about myth.
Well, this is where this gets interesting to me, because for everyone listening, you are very familiar with, and you even do tarot readings. And I think about the fool's journey in tarot, or how we talk a lot about astrology and looking at, like, the evolution of consciousness through the signs. So hearing you say this, I'm also curious in that same kind of lens, like how the fool's journey or the movement through the signs mirror to us what these spiritual journeys are like. Do you find that, like, when you're reading these stories and you're talking even about myth, that it mirrors back exactly what we're going through as humans and what we're going through on these spiritual paths? Are there like hints or whispers of wisdom that help us recognize our own strength or our own wounds? How would you describe that?
Yeah, there is a lot of, you can find any aspect of the human condition really in mythology. It's what's interesting to me is almost like how you look at a myth as a child. A lot of people have a favorite myth from childhood. Like, mine was Persephone going into the underworld,
Yeah.
leaving her mother. It's very personal to me because I would have to leave my mother, and I was sad about it. And I identified with Persephone in a certain way. But now, going back as a postmenopausal woman, I identify with the myth in a whole different way. So I've changed and it's all kind of both the same and different. And that's interesting in and of itself. And I mean, in one of the stories of creation in Greek mythology, and how things happened, it really can be looked at as the fool's journey, as the creation of the world first happened. There was earth, and there was eros. So there was, like, what we're given as gifts, earth, and this sort of pulse of life. We're body pulsing with life. And then sky is created, consciousness comes in, and night and day, in this duality, the realm of duality we're introduced to. And so there is a way that we could look at myth and various, not maybe not all the myths would have this, but certainly the creation myth does. And one of the episodes I'll be doing talks about that. Because in addition to night and day and earth and sky and mountain and was created this 100-handed, 50-headed creature. And it's almost like once you create anything, so much energy is unleashed, and you don't necessarily, and things are created that you didn't even intend. There's just this energy that comes, and stuff you never expected would emerge. And so I don't look at myth like, I don't always take it all literally. It's like the fact that this creature came with everything else is really interesting. Like, why? What else could that creature signify? To me, it also could be when you start, and there's sort of a fear sometimes which holds people back from creating, because they're afraid of what might this 100-handed thing might happen. I mean, God knows what'll happen if you start expressing yourself authentically and trying things that you didn't expect to try, on your journey. But it's a beautiful kind of lens to look at things and talk about them and make and sort of bring courage to the process of creation. And then along the way, yeah, there's the wisdom of Athena and her strategic mind, her big picture strategies. And she also is a weaver, and she's looking at the big picture, and she's very patient. She's not like Ares, in terms of war. She is a goddess of war, but is strategic. Mm-hmm. And that's important. But so is Aphrodite, however you say her. I speak the Greek words sometimes. I can't remember how to pronounce things, which language, but just there's that impulsiveness of that goddess, and also her willingness to go outside of the box in terms of, like, she's not gonna, I mean, she lets her libidinous pulse out a little bit, and she sprinkles it on everybody. But that is also kind of helps generate a little bit more juiciness to life.
Yeah.
And just to imagine that. So each of the gods and goddesses has a flavor that definitely offers wisdom on our journey as seekers.
Yeah, I'm so excited. Actually, Melinda, hearing you say this, I just remembered. I completely forgot. I actually have two different decks that are highlight goddesses, very specifically goddesses. I'll have to show you when we're done recording. But while you were speaking, I was like, oh, wow, like your show in a way will be like an oracle of sorts of how can we learn from these energies to really support us in understanding, again, like different facets of ourselves. So it's almost like pulling from the deck would be just listening to an episode of you talking about, yeah, these myths, and again, helping us see these mirrors within ourselves and what potentials may lie within them, what lessons may lie within them. And even that, I'm curious to ask you, because I've never spoken to someone who loves myth as much as you do. Do you find that the characters in Greek mythology, would you say that there's an aspect of all of them potentially within us? Or when you connect with this energy, do you feel like maybe each of us will have a resonance to one or some more than the other? Like, what are they painting a picture of the overall human consciousness? What is that?
I would have to give that more thought, Yolanda. Honestly,
Talk about it on your show.
I'm going to talk about that on my show. It is one ball of like primal energy. Okay. There's just
Yeah.
everything is there. It is wild. I mean, Prometheus is pinned to a rock and he's getting his liver eaten out every day. I mean, there is some wild stuff in there. None of us want that, but some of us might feel that that's what life is like. And
Yeah.
there is, there's some wisdom in that. So in a sense, yeah, I mean, I think everything is a mirror, of course. And I'll definitely be looking at myth from that lens. And yeah, and as we go along, I'll discover more, I'm sure. But there's also just that aspect of like the actual poetry of the myths. I mean, there is a translation that at some point, somebody has taken was inspired. For example, the origin myth of how the cosmos, one of them, there's many in Greek mythology, but one of them by Hesiod, he was a shepherd, sheep herding on a mountain. And he said that he got inspired by the muses who came and told him to write this poetry about the beginning of the world. And so it's kind of like a transmission from, this artistic impulse. And so every time these poets talk about these stories, they invoke the muses and they thank the muses who are, inspiring them with song and poetry and whatever else, all the arts come through the muses, which is something also I'm going to be talking about because I also want to like listen to the muses as I'm talking about all of this stuff and acknowledge that those original poets and bards and like Homer were translating, the information that they either received from muses, whether that be their divine imagination or, other cultures that they sort of morphed myth from, because there was definitely a lot of that happening. But, how it really highlights for me, how do we translate story of any kind and how do we work with our own imagination, going back to like trusting myself more in terms of the intuitive side of things. So that'll also be, I'll be talking about that as well.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I can't wait. I'm excited to learn. You know this, but I love to look at all of this life experience from all different lenses because I think all of it highlights and gives us a deeper understanding of our function, our potential. I think a lot of it gives us this grace of realizing nothing's wrong with us, like there are just so many different angles. And so to now learn a bit about the consciousness of this life journey through the lens of myth and hear stories that I'm not familiar with, or even ones that I am, to consider them differently. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
So I do want to, before we go, I just want to let people know that if they are in Massachusetts, they can probably come and actually dance and do aerial if they're ready for it with you in person. They can also come and indulge with Speakeasy Reiki in person. But what can people do to work with you online as well?
Yes, I have a couple of Zoom classes every month or so where I'm calling them Rise and Shimmy. And I always that's on the website moodystreetcircus.com. I think under, I don't know, online classes or something like that. I can't quite remember, but you can always email the studio. There's a link on the website about that. And I have a couple coming up in June, and they're always fun because you get to stay in your living room or whatever. And I'm guiding you through movement and shimmies of all kinds with my mythic perspective, sometimes drawing oracle cards or tarot or inspired by numerology. There's always something, but keeping us moving and smiling and like going off on our days, feeling a little bit more inspired and happy. So,
Yes.
yeah.
It's always good to start with some good, juicy inspiration. I have to say, this is incredible. Just sitting here talking to you about this again after knowing you all of these years and watching how you personally have evolved with how this works with you and really making it your own, and the way that it has again blended into what was already there and so authentic to who you are. And I hope a lot of people listening, you recognize that it's not like she had to completely sidestep out of her life, but rather look at how all of these practices and work and teachings have, if nothing else, it feels like expanded your life and how you've done things. So, everyone, I will put the link to work with Melinda, learn more about her work, moodystreetcircus.com, down in the show description. Also, of course, she will be featured on this beautiful podcast, Awakening Airwaves, and her episodes, her whole show is called Mythic Mel. I'll put the link for that as well down in the show description. And if you do want to work with her, especially in the arts of energetic alchemy and energy healing, she'll also be featured on the website called the Reiki class. And this is where I will be featuring practitioners and teachers that I know are reputable for those of you who want to work with people local to you or just want to take some online classes with them. You can go to the reikiclass.com, and Melinda has her feature there as well. So, honey, thank you for coming to share today.
Thank you, Yolanda. I am blessed with you in my life. I love you so much. I cannot tell you, everyone. This woman she's changed my life. So empowering, but also just allowing us all to be in our own experience and practice for ourselves and encourage that, really, that self practice, never over explaining or being pedantic about what should be, but really allowing you to be who you are and how you are, but also diligent in your practice. So I really appreciate you so much. And this opportunity, I'm so excited about doing Mythic Mel and learning how to podcast. It has been something else, I tell you what. But
Yeah.
I'm ready. I'm ready. And it's fun and
Yeah,
crazy.
and with that, I just want to remind everyone too, this is Melinda's first podcast, okay? So as she goes along, please reach out to her, let her know how you're enjoying the episodes, let her know what you are learning from the myths that she shares, stay in touch and let her know, because it's she can tell you now doing it there's a lot more that goes on in the background than you would imagine. So yeah, I'm really excited. And one last thing, my love, just because it is so common now, what is the best Instagram would you like people to connect? She has several.
Well, let's see. I mean, for the Reiki, I have Speakeasy Reiki.
Speakeasy.
For my belly dance world, I have Melina Belly Dancer because I use my Greek name as my artistic name for dance. So I am Melina Belly Dancer if you're interested in the belly dance world of mine. And then my circus world is encompassed as Cirque Melinda, Cirque Melinda. And, that's just because I'm an old lady who figured out Instagram. I'm not some young, I don't know. I don't know what to do. I just created a whole bunch of things for all these different pockets. But the fact is, I'm the same person and I weave all of that all together.
Yeah.
And however you've come to know me, I'm called by many names, and so are many goddesses. So
Yeah.
that's just the way it goes. But any way you want to reach out in all of those dimensions, totally fine.
Yeah. So we'll put them down in the show description. Just go ahead and follow them all. I'll
Moody
tell
Street
you.
Circus. That's right. That was the other. And Moody Street Circus.
Yes. So I can tell you, her watching her on what she posts from belly dancing and the aerial work, all of it, all of that is even inspiring within itself. But I will put all of your contacts down in the show description. Everyone, mark your calendar. The Reiki class website, as well as this podcast, Awakening Airwaves, will all launch on June 11th. So mark your calendar, and I will remind you to tune in to Mythic Mel. And we thank you all for joining us today.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, beautiful alchemist. I just want to thank Melinda again for coming to share her work and to inspire us all. Don't forget that her new podcast is going to be on our platform called Awakening Airwaves, and her show is called Mythic Mel. So I will put the links below so you can be sure to tune in. Don't forget to connect with her, stay in touch with her, let her know how much you enjoy her sharing her offerings of myth. And you can go to her website, modystreetcircus.com. You can also check out this new podcast platform called awakeningairwaves.com. So I thank you all so much for being here. There are more hosts for you to meet, so stay tuned. I will see you very soon. And remember to always journey in love.